Pesach's Bava Kamma Daf Lamed Zayin begins with a Mishnah and has another Mishnah near the end. The Mishnah, which begins the Daf, introduces the topic of becoming a mood for various different categories. If a shar develops a reputation as being a mood for certain types of attacks, does that get generalized to being a mood for other things as well? In the last Mishnah, we'll discuss ownership by various different entities and when the rules of Nezikin change because of that. So let's begin. The first Mishnah discusses three types of muad. It says muad for another cow as opposed to for a different species. It talks about muad for a person as opposed to an animal. And talks about muad for a small animal, meaning for a calf or such, as opposed to a full-grown animal. And the Mishnah says being a muad for a different, for its own species does not mean it's a muad for different species. That it's, if it often attacks another ox, does not mean it'll attack a horse or a donkey. For example, being muad for a person does not mean he's muad for a behemoth, and being muad for a small animal does not make him a muad for a larger animal. Now, it's interesting to note that a person is harder to kill, harder to attack than a larger animal, because as we've seen earlier in the Masechta, a person has mazel, and therefore you need an extra special level of violence or intent to actually be able to hurt a person as opposed to another animal. On the other hand, a small animal is more likely to be victimized than a large animal. So those two are opposite in how they are spelled out as a chiddush. So this is all the first half of the Mishnah, and it says that mood for one does not mean mood for the other. You could be a mood for one and pay chatzi nezek for attacks that happen in the other category. Now, Rabbi Yehuda was asked, what about different times? Can you be a mood for Shabbos and not for the Yemei Chol? And Rabbi Yehuda said, yes, you could have the ox's mood only to attack on Shabbos, and therefore any attacks which he'll do on Shabbos he'll pay Nezek Shalem. However, any other attacks which he'll do during the week, he's not a mood for, so he'll pay Chatzi Nezek. Now, Gemara begins, whereas the machlokes between Rav Zvid and Rav Papa, what the lumnus of the Mishnah is and what the wording actually of the Mishnah is. When the Mishnah said that a shar is a muad for its min, did it say and it's known to not be a muad for the other min? Or did it say and we don't know if it's a muad for the other min? Meaning, do we say sharshu muad liminai ve'enai muad l'sheni min? It has to be established that it's not a muad for a different min. That means that it attacked another ox, let's say 3 times, but it had 3 opportunities to attack a horse and it did not, so it's established that it's not a muad. But if it would not have established, it would have never had exposure, we would assume that there's no difference between this ox, what kind of animal it's facing. Or do you say no, a shar which is a muad for its min is not a muad for another min? You have to separately establish being a mood for something else. So the machlokes between Rav Zvid and Rav Papa really is, what is the general assumption? In lack of other information, do you assume that you generalize it from one category to another? And the 3 examples we'd be discussing this Mishnah would be from its min to a different min, from a person to a behemoth, and from a small animal to a large animal. So the opinion of Rav Zvid would be that it is generally considered to be automatic unless you've established otherwise. And then you would generalize it from one to the other. And Rav Papa holds no. You say that generally we would assume that it is not generalized. It's not automatic. You have to establish the category of mood for all things. Now, the Gemara says, let's read the Mishnah according to either of them and see how they each understand how everything fits in. So the Gemara says, the Rav Zvid is Madaik from the Seifa, and Rav Papa is Madaik from the Reisha. Rav Zvid is Madaik from the Seifa, from the case where it says that a mood for small animals is not a mood for large animals. Why is that a chiddush? Now, if you read it the way Rav Zvid wants to read it, that generally you would assume that it is generalized, and you could assume that if it is a mood for small animals, it's a mood for large animals as well, that's a chiddush. If you only see it attacks small animals, it's a chiddush to tell me that it also would be naturally violent against a large animal, which is much more capable of defending itself. And therefore, according to Rav Zvid, that line is a chiddush. But according to Rav Papa, that the stam is that it's not a mood for a larger animal. You're talking only about a case where you know that it's a mood for small animals and not for large animals. Why is that a chiddush? Why would I think otherwise? Especially in light of the fact that the first case in the Mishnah said that if it's a mood for one min, it is not automatically assumed to be a mood for the other min, that would, and they're both small. So if from one min to another, and they're both small, is not automatic. So from a small animal to a larger animal, for sure, would be not considered to be automatic. So when it says that Rav Papa would read it otherwise, he said you would think that no, it really goes by min. And when an animal chooses its victims, it chooses by min, not by size. And therefore, as soon as you've seen exposure to him in one min, you know that all those of that min he's a muad for. But if it's from one min to another, then not. And therefore, it's a chiddush to tell me, no, even from a small one to a larger one within the same min, you do not assume. So that's how Rav Zvid and Rav Papa each respectively read the Seifa. Now, how do you read the Reisha? So Rav Papa brings his Raya from the Reisha, because there it says that a mood for a person is not a mood for a behema. Now, if you read it that it's not a mood, and that it means to tell me that there's no automatic assumption that just because it's a mood for a person, it's also a mood for an adam. So that's a chiddush, that although a person is harder to attack because he has mazel, that you don't think that there is no automatic, that it also applies to an animal. But if you say that it's ve'enei muad, if you want to say that it's automatic, that we assume automatically without any other information, we would assume that it is a muad. So what's a chiddush in this? If it's a automatic muad from behema to another behema, as we said before, so certainly if it's a muad for an adam, for a person, it should be assumed automatically that it's a mood for a behema. After all, an adam is harder to attack. So why would I need that? So Rav Zvid answers, this case, the chiddush is not that it becomes a mood. The chiddush is when you go back from being a mood, because the Mishnah also mentions the way you go down from being a mood is by having 3 opportunities to do that same attack and it not happening. So what happens if this animal is a mood for a person, and therefore he's also considered to be a mood for a behema, and then 3 times he has an opportunity to attack a behema and he does not? Now, it's definitely not going to be a reversal for an adam. Just because he desists from attacking a behema doesn't mean he reversed from being an adam. We already saw he attacked an adam 3 times. So you may think, therefore, the reversal for a behema isn't counted as a reversal either, because he stays in mood for an adam, and we generalize from a mood for an adam to be a mood for a behema as well. So you may think, therefore, he stays in mood for an adam, and by extension, he also stays in mood for a behema. No, he does go down from being a muad to a behema to being not a muad, because 3 times he had an opportunity and he did not. And although he will stay a muad adam, he is now a tam for behema. Now, the Gemara asks on this from the opinion of Sumchus, which we saw quoted on the first daf in the Masechta, who says that a muad for a person is a muad for behema. So from Bava Kamma, if he's muad to attack an adam, certainly he'll attack a person. And then we know that the Tana Kamma argues on that. Therefore, the Tana Kamma obviously holds that a muad for a person does not make him automatically a mood for an adam as well. Therefore, in this Mishnah here is obviously saying Einoi mood. He's saying that the generally that we would ordinarily assume just because he's mood for an adam does not mean he's mood for a behema. That's reading it like a papa, not Rav Zvid. There's no generalization from a person to a behema. So Gemara says Rav Zvid will say that Sumchus wasn't talking about becoming a mood, just like we answered before. He was talking about returning from a muad to being a tam. And this is what it means to say, when it returns from being a muad on a behema, it is a valid return, even though he remains a muad for an adam. And on that, that's what the Tana Kamma holds. And on that, some says no. Since he stays a muad on an adam, kal v'chomer, he's a muad for a behema, because a behema is easier to attack than an adam, and therefore he retains the muad status even on a behema. The Gemara now brings 2 solid rayas that the proper version has to be ve'enei muad, that the Mishnah is telling you where we know it's not a muad, but that generally we would assume that if it's a muad for one, it's a muad for the other. And that's from the next case where the Talmidim said to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's a muad for Shabbos, and it's not a muad for during the week. Now, this has to be that they were saying it's a muad for Shabbos and it's not a muad for during the week, that the right gersa is ve'enei muad, and they were asking, is there such a concept, and will it retain the halacha of being a tam for during the week? If, however, the gersa is ain't a muad, like Rav Papa wants it to be, then they were saying to him, a muad for Shabbos is not a muad for during the week. So the Talmidim are teaching Rabbi Yehuda something, and also what's he answering? He answers them, if he gores during the week, he pays chatzin nezek. Of course, that's what they were saying. So it has to be read that we're talking about where we know he's a mood for Shabbos and he's not a mood for during the week. which if that's the girsa, then in the previous cases that's the girsa as well. Second raya is from the beginning of the Mishnah, where we say a mood for one min is not a mood for another. And the Mishnah continues and it says that which it's a mood for business. That which is not a mood for pays chatzi nezek. Again, what are we referring to? If we're referring to where the standard halacha is that it's not a mood, then what are you saying? When you said it's a mood for one is not a mood for another, automatically you're already telling me that it has a din of a tam for everything else. What are you adding then? And for the tam you pay chatzi nezek. Of course, that's what you just said. Your point was that just because you're a mood for one thing, you're not a mood for something else. The only way to read it is it's a mood for one thing, and it has not established being a mood as something else. And then the Mishnah tells me the halacha is it has the din of a mood for what it's a mood for, and a din of a tam for what it's a tam for, and then the rest of it reads and it makes sense. Now the Gemara just adds in one halacha here. The Gemara says if you would hold like Rav Papa that the reading is Einai Muad, that the standard is you don't expand from one category to the other. If a shar became a muad by attacking three different minim, a shar, a chamar, and a gamal, an ox, a donkey, and a camel, then it would be muad for every species, because in its establishment it didn't differentiate between one min and another, and therefore in its halacha it doesn't differentiate between one min and another. The Gemara now speaks about the topic of moodless sirugin. That's if you could have an animal which is a muad to gore in a pattern. That's not every animal it sees, but let's say every other one or every third one. So we begin with the brisa that discusses every other animal. So this one saw 6 shivarim, 6 oxen, one after the other, and he gored every second one. He gored 1, 3, and 5. So the halacha is he becomes a muad. And for every other one, if he were to gore 2 in a row, then the second one he would be a tam for. Now, another brisa says the same halacha applies across different species. So if he saw an ox and he gored it, a donkey and did not gore it, a horse and gored it, a camel did not gore it, a mule gored it, and then an ored and did not gore it, then he saw 6 different animals and became a muad in jumps for every other one. And the same would be true for going forward. He'd be a muad for every other animal that he sees. The Gemara now discusses a list of shailas as to how you create the pattern. What type of mood do we assume? So the Gemara first has 4 cases where you have a middle case between 2 sets, and you're not sure if it belongs to the first set or the last set. So first example is if the ox gored 5 animals, a shar, then a donkey and a gamal, camel. So do you view the middle shar as belonging to the first set, and therefore it's a complete set of 3 oxen, and he becomes a mood for oxen? Then afterwards you only have a donkey and a camel, and you don't have a mood for other species? Or do you view the third goring of the shar, the middle of the 5, as belonging to the set of the chamar and the gamal? Now you have a shar, chamar, and a gamal, and it becomes a mood for all species. Now if you say the middle one here, the shar, the third shar, goes together with the previous 2, maybe that's because that set was first, and he's the third of a set, so he goes with that set. Or what will be if it's the opposite? What will be if he first sees the donkey, then the camel, and then he sees an ox 3 times? Would you say that now the first ox, which is the middle of the set of a 5, goes with the donkey and the camel, so it will be donkey, camel, ox, and that's a set for various different species? Or you say no, we view it as being part of the set of ox and ox that follows, and therefore it's 3 oxen, and he's a mood only for oxen. Now, the Gemara has the exact same set of questions as far as timing. So if he gores on Shabbos, and then Sunday, Monday, so the middle one, the Shabbos, is that together with the first set, and it's a set of 3 Shabbosim, or is it together with the last one, and it's a set of Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, and therefore the day is irrelevant? And if you want to say that there will go with the previous 2 Shabbosim, that would be because he's completing a set. What would be if he's beginning a set? So what would be if he gored Thursday, Friday, Shabbos? The middle one, does that go together with the set of Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, or does it go with the set of Shabbos? Nafkamina, of course, is he moved for during the week or only for Shabbosim? Gemara says teiku on all these questions. Now the Gemara introduces the concept of a muad b'sibrugin. That's if he skips in time. He doesn't gore a day following a day following a day. He skips from one day to the next day in extending jumps each time. So let's say 1 month he gores on the 15th of the month, then he gores the next month on the 16th of the month, and then the next month on the 17th of the month. So do you say his pattern is to gore a day and a month later? Or do you say that he's only done that twice. He's only done a skip and a jump. And he's skipped twice, from Tezvav to Yud Zayin the next month, and then from Tezayin to Yud Zayin the next month. So he's only done 2 skips. 3 gorings are only 2 skips. In order to create a pattern, you need 3 skips. So if the next month he'll do the 18th of the month again for the 3rd time, becoming a muad after the passage of a month and a day from the previous goring, then he'll become a muad. What do you say? So the Gemara says this is dependent on the exact same machlokes we have in Hilchos Nida, where a woman is creating a veset, an establishment of a pattern of when her period comes. And that's machlokes Rav and Shmuel, the exact same case where she sees the dam nida on the 15th, and the next month on the 16th, and the next month on the 17th. Do you say you have 3 bisirugin, so you've already created a pattern of 3? That's the opinion of Rav. We could assume he would say the same thing here. Well, Shmuel says, though, no, you need to see the next month on the 18th, and then you have 3 skips. You have a set of 3 skips, and then you create the pattern, and he would seemingly say the same thing here as well. Next halacha the Gemara brings, final one before our next Mishnah, is from Rava, who says if he hears a shofar blow and he gores 3 times, he becomes a muad for goring whenever he hears a shofar blow. And if the next time he'll do that, he'll be chayev nezek shalem for that. Or says that's pashat what's a chiddush. Chiddush is, you may think the first one and didn't have anything to do with him being a muad. It was just that he got scared, and therefore if it'll happen again, you won't include that in the count. You'll have to start the counting over. We now begin our next Mishnah, which discusses the halachas of ownership. So the Mishnah talks about what happens if you have an interaction of hezek between your shar, assuming you're a regular Yisrael, between your shar and that of hektish, or between your shar and that of an akum. So Kanani is the word that's used here in our text. So the first case is if shar of a hedyet gores shal hektish, or the opposite, there's no chiyuv. There's a p'tur, because the Torah says only shar re'eyu. And if it's a shar shel Kanani, you don't have a din of tam. So if the shar Yisrael attacks the shar Kanani, he's pater. If the shar Kanani attacks the shar Yisrael, there's no din of tam. He pays nezek shalom right away. But either way, the din of tam doesn't exist because it's not re'ehu. Now we begin the Gemara, which introduces the opinion of Shimon ben Manasseh. We have a brisa where Shimon ben Manasseh argues on the Bava Kamma about the halacha of a shar hektish and a shar re'eyu and a shar hedyet, and he sets that halacha up the same way our Mishnah sets up the shar Yisrael and the shar Kanani. And he says that a shar hedyet that goes to shar hektish pays nezek shalom. Shar of hektish that is nagech shar shel hedyet is pater. The Gemara says that our Mishnah obviously doesn't go like that because it doesn't say that halacha. It says that he's pater either way. So we're asked, what is Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh's lumdus? The Torah says shar re'eyu. When it says shar re'eyu, if that's dafka re'eyu and not hektish, so then it should be pater either way when there's a shar shel hektish involved. Whoever's the mazik and whoever's the nizik. And if it's lav dafka, it should be chayev either way because the Torah is saying you're chayev. So why does he say that one way you're chayev, one way you're not chayev? The Gemara tries to answer. Maybe he says there's a kavachimer. Maybe re'eyu really is dafka. Therefore, the pasuk is not talking about hektish at all. However, when a shar hedyet gores a shar hektish, kavachimer. If he's chayev for goring a shar of hedyet, kavachimer is chayev for goring a shar of hektish. Someone asks on that, then how would he pay nezek shalom? We know the rule, kavachimer is always limited to the source. Daye lavim and adin lias kanidin. You can't learn more than that. And therefore, just like the source you're learning from, which is a shar hedyet against a shar hedyet, pays chatzi nezek tam. Shar hedyet against shar hektish, you couldn't learn more than that. So Gemara answers, the way Shimon ben Manasseh learns the pasuk is that it's written only by tam. That's where it says re'ehu. So the din re'ehu is limited to the din of tam. Tam is only on a re'ehu. However, shar shel hektish has a din muad. And therefore the din muad it does apply to make the shar of hektish be pater, but nezek shalem if he becomes damaged. Rashi points out that this gzeres hakasav, which excludes re'ehu, excludes hektish. The word re'ehu is only meant to be a chumrah. It says lahachmer v'leil hakolav. So it's machmer to say that you have to pay nezek shalom, and the din of tam doesn't apply. Instead, if there's no din tam, you go with the original halacha, which is that you pay nezek shalom until the Torah taught us the din of the tam. However, it's only to be machmer, and therefore it's not going to get you nezek shalom from hektish in return as well.